All right, welcome and good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday, and thank you so much for joining us today for our annual user symposium. So if you haven't yet, please take a moment to locate that Zoom chat. You'll want to make sure you have that handy to ask all of your questions and, of course, to connect with other WebCheckout users. Now, before we jump in and introduce everyone on the WebCheckout team on our call today, I do want to make just a few announcements. So as a quick note, everyone is muted for audio quality because we are recording these sessions today. So if you do have any questions, please be sure to use that Zoom chat feature to ask those questions, and our team will do our best to either answer those questions through the chat, or we might hold your questions until the end of each session for our little Q&A at the end of each session. All right, so to get us started, we are going to be reviewing our agenda, and we'll introduce everyone. So welcome everyone again. My name is Brittany Wood, and I'll be your host throughout today's activities. So this morning, we'll get started with our first session from 11 to 12 Central Time, and AJ will be hosting this session and reviewing the July 2023 release. He will also be joined by a very special guest star from SVA. At 12 o'clock p.m. Central Time, we're going to review the web checkout community with Brandon, Kurt, and Warren Pettis. Then from 1 to 2, we'll have a lunch break. So I hope everyone has something good planned for lunch. And from 2 to 3, I'll be leading a session reviewing room circulation. And then finally at 3 o'clock p.m., we will have a very special discussion with a fireside chat with Lee Ayers and Sean Farrell. And then finally at 4 o'clock p.m., Jeannie will lead some closing remarks. All right. Well, we have a very exciting day planned, and thank you all for taking time out of our busy days. So again, I want to welcome AJ Ootman. Again, he's going to start us off by reviewing the July 2023 release.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brittany. I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right. So as Brittany mentioned, I am AJ Ootman, your customer success manager. All right. And it looks like, there we go. Looks like I didn't quite start on the right slide. There we go. All right, well, for today, I will be reviewing the new improvements to our July 2023 release. The goal of this release is streamlining your workflows. Specifically, we've made improvements to the patron portal, circulation with new staging features, as well as improvements to the require scan to pickup. And after that, I'll just go over a few back to school reminders. And then, as Brittany mentioned, we have a very special guest, Rashawn Castro from the School of Visual Arts in New York City. To get started today, I'm going to go over the new improvements to the patron portal. Now, I'm going to shrink my screen down to mimic what most of your users will be using the patron portal on, which is typically a cell phone. You might also notice on this patron portal, this teal and orange. That is because this is a patron portal that's been branded. Many of you that have used professional service hours this year have gotten your patron portal branded with your school colors as well as with your logo. Well, to start these new features, I'm going to begin by creating a reservation for Tina Belcher. I'll hit this reserve icon. And then it already has selected my checkout center. So I'll hit OK. And I see a message of the day pop up. This is a new improvement in that right after you hit reserve, the message of the day will pop up. And now I'll begin by setting up my reservation. So I'll set my start time for tomorrow at 10 a.m. And this will go until Monday, also at 10 a.m. I'll save those. And I'll scroll down and select Tina's project, Smart and Fresh. And I'll have Tina agree to this alert to my terms and conditions. And then at the bottom of the screen, we see another new feature, where now when you scroll to the bottom of your reservation form, adding contents is more intuitive because you can simply click the book icon to add your contents. I can then add it either by searching through my resource type catalog or using the search icon to type in what I'm looking for. I'm looking for my Sony camera bundles. All right, and I'll select my Sony camera bundle. Now, adding a bundle, you will need our RRT and bundle modules, but I just want to note that this is the same method that you can add items by ID. So if you don't have this module, you of course can add your items in the same method. I'll hit the plus icon to add this bundle to my reservation. Now I'll close out this modal and see the items that were added. Right away, I notice there's improved iconography and that we have this red X shopping cart to remove one of these resource types from the order. And I have the plus icon to add another resource of this type to this reservation. Now that I've added these items, I'm ready to save it. So I'll scroll to the top and I can see another new feature in that the ready to save button is right here on the front screen for a more intuitive workflow. I'll hit the save button. And now my reservation is confirmed. As I've created this reservation and showcased these improvements in Patron Portal, I'm ready to move on to our improvements in operator circulation, specifically how to stage or pre-pack an order. All right. Now, staging was part of SVA's sponsored development. The School of Visual Arts BFA Film Department had a variety of needs. The department regularly pre-packs large orders of over 100 items, and they needed a way to track their progress of what had been staged and what was ready to be picked up. Additionally, they needed a way for multiple operators to prepare an order at any given time. In addition to staging, because of the size and complexity of their orders, they needed a way to copy allocations and retain any edits or changes that they had made. As of the July 2023 release, all of these are available. So I'm going to start with staging. As mentioned, this does allow operators to track the progress of their pre-packing. So I'll select the CKID for Tina Belcher that we just created in the portal. And I can see at the top of this allocation detail screen that its current status is unstaged and unscanned. So I'm going to stage this order. I'll scroll down and on this left-hand pane, I'll select Stage Reservation. This will open our Stage Reservation modal where I can scan in my items that are pre-packed. I'll go ahead and stage a couple items by scanning in their barcodes. And once I scan them in, they will be added to this latest scan results on the right-hand pane. And you'll notice that the status is listed above for the percent of how many items of this order have been staged. You may notice an operator with a shopping cart icon on this order. This will show up for items that have been reserved by ID or for unserialized items like this extension cord that I'm adding. This allows for manual staging of these items by simply clicking this icon. That item has now been manually staged. Well, let's imagine that I step away from staging these items because I have to attend to something else going on in my checkout center. I'll close out the modal and return to my front screen. And when I come back later in the day, I can look at my outgoing pane and see my staging progress. So I see that this order has been 60% staged and its overall status is listed as partially staged. These values are now available in the result columns on your find pages. And like all result columns, you can add them to your front panes. I'm going to go ahead and complete staging this order. So I'll select the CK ID. And then on the left-hand pane, I'm going to go again to stage reservation. And I will scan in the rest of my barcodes. Once I scan them in, I notice an alert on one of the items. I see this orange question mark icon. If I click it, it opens a warning that this barcode matches a resource that is currently checked out. This is a new improvement also requested by SVA. Some of you may have found that with really large orders, a patron may bring back 1 or 2 items, and maybe due to the busyness of the day, those items weren't fully checked back in because of the rest of the order is still outstanding. That happened a few times with SVA, and so part of their sponsored development was enabling the ability to return an item while you scan it into this new reservation. So I'll go ahead and click this little return arrow. It'll verify that I want to check this item back in as well as scan it. I'll hit yes. And now it has been added to this scanned items. I see that my status has gone up to 100%. This is fully staged and ready to go. Now, if I scroll to the top, I see that the status has changed to staged, but it's still unscanned. For many of you on the call, you will likely either use just staging or scanning, but possibly not both. However, some institutions may want to employ both. To do that, they'll need to use the require scan to pickup capability. The reason you might want to use this is if you want to track pre-packing through staging, but then once all of your items are fully packed, ready to go, when the patron comes to pick them up, you may want your operators to do a final scan for pickup just to double check that everything is there and accounted for. So I'll hit scan for pickup and I will scan in my barcodes. And it matches those barcodes and I see that the status goes to 100%. I want to note that scan results are also available as result columns on your find pages, just like staging, and those two can be added to the front screen. Well, this has fully been scanned in, so I'll go ahead and hit pickup and hand it to Tina. Now, let's imagine that another student calls that is a part of Tina's project, Smart and Fresh. And this student is wanting this exact same order, but for the following week. To help save time, I'm going to use the copy allocation button. Once I hit copy, I see an additional new feature in this release. Historically, copy allocations would copy the allocation as it was originally created. However, SVA noticed that with their large orders, they frequently will remove or add items to an order. And once all those items come back, they often need the ability to just send those same items out as they presently are. So now we have 3 copy options. Preserve will preserve the reservation as it was originally created. All ID will copy it in its current form, but convert everything to ID. All RRT, for those with the RRT module, will copy everything in its current form, but converting everything to RRT. You may remember we originally built this order by RRT. I'm going to copy it to all ID to ensure that this student gets these exact items so that when they come back, I can just ship them right off to the next patron. I'll select all ID and hit submit. I now want to adjust on the left-hand pane that it's not going to go to Tina, but go to the student that called. So I'll hit the pencil icon and swap out my patron to Samuel Powers. I'll select that same project they're working on, Smart and Fresh, and I'm going to move my start time to the next week and then hit submit. The allocation is fully copied, so I'll go ahead and hit confirm reservation. All right. Now, I'm going to imagine that Samuel recalls and says that he additionally needs a camera dolly added to this order. Now, I want to make a note that due to all of the improvements in circulation, editing a reservation must now be explicit. Because you can stage or scan a reservation, edit reservation ensures the ability to add items or adjust your time. So I'll hit edit reservation. And this time I'm going to add an item from our catalog. So I'll scroll down and click the drop-down caret from my camera dollies. Here I notice an additional improvement in our iconography, in that now all condition notes are highlighted in orange and any offline items are highlighted in red. This is an improvement based on feedback we got from our last webinar, where multiple admins requested color coding on this catalog view. I'll select a camera dolly, and now we'll save this reservation. I want to note here that for accessibility, over 90% of the tickets that were noted on our March 2023 VPAT have all been addressed in this release. And now I want to go over just a few back to school reminders, as I know many of you are within a few days or even a couple weeks between now and when your school starts. So prior to your semester starting, I recommend checking all of your student and course data. So specifically ensure that your patron data has been loaded with all of your active users. And then of course, if you are restricting any resource types or checkout centers, ensure that your groups, section, and section member data has been loaded. And of course, that those resource types that are restricted have been linked to your groups to grant access. And of course, if you have any certifications, to add those in as well. Once you've done all of that, ensure that your checkout center calendar hours are set and that you've included any holidays for your upcoming semester. Double check your policies and settings, especially if you've had changes since the last school year. Also, look over your email templates to ensure that any pertinent information is on them and that you've added your new operators. Finally, I always recommend creating a few test allocations to verify your workflow and ensure that you've worked through any potential problems that may have arisen or things that you may have forgot during the summer. All right, well, at this time, I am going to stop my share because I would like to invite Rashawn Castro for an interview. So Rashawn, if you don't mind turning on your camera.
Maybe I'll log on.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Rashawn. If you could just please introduce yourself to everyone and talk a little bit about your role at SVA and specifically a little more information about your checkout center. So what type of gear do you typically circulate? Who's picking that up? And what are they typically using that gear for?
Yeah, so hello, everybody. Name is Rashawn Castro. I'm the reservation coordinator here at the School of Visual Arts and our in the film department. Um, Mainly what we give out, obviously, is film equipment, so ranging from, of course, cameras of different types, from Blackmagics all the way up to RA Alexas, sound, of course, lighting, grip and electric equipment, and a lot of, yeah, and most of the students who take out equipment will take out those items. Yeah, that's mainly what we give out here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rashawn, for that information. And I'm also curious, so what type of problems were you encountering when you reached out to us for sponsored development work?
Yeah, so, the issue that we were running into, and which you stated, early on at the beginning, was that we were having issues with only having one user or one administrator pack, one large order. So we would have an issue where we would have a very large thesis order, and we could only have one person on that allocation at a time, where when it was a large order and we had, like, a lot of grip electric equipment, lights, camera, sound, we're talking close to 500 items or more. We really had to move quickly, and it was really slowing us down when we weren't able to kind of get a second or third user on to that on one allocation to pack. So we came to WebCheckout and we were like, look, we really need to have multiple people work on one order. So, we came to them, we came to WebCheckout, and we gave them our ideas as to what we felt could possibly work. And we said, like I said, we need multiple people on there at a time. And so we talked about, what the interface maybe could look like. And we sort of went from there.
Gotcha. Okay, great. So sounds like really a big need for multiple people working through those large orders, as well as, of course, being able to track that status was really big to you.
Yeah, and tracking the status, because we have a lot of student workers here, and not all of them work full-time, they're part-timers. And so we would have students who would work maybe 3 hours. They would get through a couple orders, and then, they would reach the end of their shift and they were in the middle of a pack, and then they would have to leave, a pack half packed. And what would happen is that because of the old interface, we couldn't tell which orders were finished, or which orders were quarter packed or 3/4 packed, half packed. And that was kind of becoming an issue too. Another thing that was also an issue was when we had unserialized items. So what's great about the new staging feature is that now you can manually click, what unserialized items you want to bring in. So we have a lot of like clamps and extension cords, which are unserialized. Well, what happened is the old edit system, those serialized items would automatically just be there. So then students would think, oh, they're already there and packed, but they weren't. So now they have to go in and manually check, which is really helpful too. So that, on top of having a percentage and knowing what was staged and what isn't, is really been a real game changer for us, which has helped us to feel more efficient too.
Awesome. And I am just curious, For those in the audience right now, if you could just put like a thumbs up in chat, if you frequently have the problem where your student orders may not fully pre-pack something. So, maybe they've left it on the counter, they didn't fully check everything. So I'm just kind of curious about if that has happened to others that are on the call. Yeah, I'm already seeing a few thumbs up pop in. Okay. That's helpful to know. So Rashawn, I'm also curious, I know right now you all are on summer, these features just became available. So I know you're still testing. However, are you already seeing any improvement to your workflow in terms of tracking accuracy, in terms of speed? Have you already noticed improvements, or is it still maybe a little too early for that?
No, I mean, we've already noticed improvements for sure. Obviously we're not in session right now because it is the summer. But with the new update, we did do a number of tests with staging. And yeah, we noticed, immediately that, yeah, we can actually pack, one order and have multiple users in that one allocation. So me and my coworker, we did a test. We broke out two Black Magics, and we took out a piece of equipment that we only have one of, so that way we could test the turnaround for another order that might need that same piece of equipment. So we did that, and everything really worked out quite well. There were no snafus of any kind. Yeah, it really worked exactly as we wanted it to.
That's great. And I just want to know also to commend you and the rest of SVA. The BFA film department is really great about creating test allocations, which is so important, as I mentioned on that back to school checklist before you go into your year. That's great. So Rashawn, I'm also curious, how was the process of reaching out to WebCheckout for sponsor development? And would you recommend that process to anybody else on the call?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I definitely recommend, reaching out if you're running into an issue where you feel like something is not as efficient as you would like it to be. Lee and Sean and even yourself, AJ, were very helpful in just talking to us about like, okay, what do you guys need? How can we help? And just we had numerous back and forths and dialogues about what it is we were looking for, because we really felt that it was imperative for us and important for us that we have this efficiency when it came to being able to turn over orders more quickly, in RRT or ID, and yeah, you guys are very helpful and very receptive to the ideas that we had. And no, yeah, I would absolutely recommend that, if anyone who in their institutions, they need some kind of, feature tweak, that, definitely talk to you guys, reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that insight, Rashawn. Was there anything else that you'd want to add for the other administrators on the call?
Not off the top of my head right now, no.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Rashawn, for sharing with us. We appreciate so much that you did sponsor this development. I know that it will not only help your center, but I think it's going to help a lot of other centers at your institution and for the others that are on the call. So thank you.
Sure, no problem. Thank you, AJ.
Awesome. Well, at this time, I do want to open the floor for questions. I believe some have come in the chat, and I think our customer care team has been fielding some of them.
Yeah, we didn't really get many questions in the chat. So folks, if you do have questions, especially about the new version, please ask those questions.
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself if you have questions and just fire away. If not, it's just
Hi.
a sign that.
Hello?
Oh.
It's
Hello.
Luis.
Hi,
It's
Luis.
Luis
Hi,
Brens.
Luis. Hi.
Awesome. How are you?
Good, good.
Unfortunately, I jumped in a little late, so I missed half about 20 minutes also of the of your presentation. But I do have a big question, and see if anybody can help me. We're literally
Sure.
2 weeks to start classes, and we have no outdated yet. And one of my biggest fear is to if outdate just before the semester. As any in terms of has anybody experienced any problems that should I do the update right now? Should I wait? I just don't want to go into a semester right away and face tremendous amount of problem because we're in the middle of training, all kinds of stuff. So
Yeah, that's such a great question, Luis. And I'm actually just making a note of this. And that I will follow up.
I guess I'm sorry for Jay. I guess what I'm trying to say is usually anything new, any update, any software. I
Yeah,
typically like to do it in the middle and early in the summer so I can work out all the problems, and just going into a full year right away. It's always a concern for us in here.
yeah, that's a great question, Luis. So I'm going to make sure that you're on our follow-up list, so on our users list, to get the recording of this call so you can look at those new features. I'll just also reach out to you specifically to send you the release notes and make sure you have access to see these new features in action. What I would say for you and for the rest of the people on the call, the most significant new features were those improvements in Patron Portal, as well as that new staging feature. So that's the most significant. There's, of course, many other features and just improvements to the application. So I mentioned that we've done a lot to improve accessibility. In terms of scheduling an upgrade, if you do have time in the next 2 weeks and want to schedule it, that's always great. If you're a little nervous because you are testing for your school year, you can always wait till your next break. So if you want to wait until the winter break to upgrade, that's perfectly fine. And that would, of course, give you just a little more time to look at those new features.
Thank you very much. My decision is not just based on one web checkout here. As you know, we have multiple ones. And then I had to also take in consideration how is that going to affect the other web checkout in terms of that. So that's why I asked that questions.
Sure. Yeah, so it'll affect every checkout center on your instance. So that's a great question. If they are a bit reticent, my recommendation is take our release notes, review them, and then just plan on the next break to make that upgrade.
Thank you so much.
Of course. And I see in the chat, so is the July update one we should contact web checkout support for? Absolutely. So you'll just reach out to support@webcheckout.net, and that email will also be on the final slide of this presentation so that you can get that upgrade scheduled. Oh, great question. So I see Suzanne, is it barcode only? Great question, Suzanne. The answer is no. So you may remember in my presentation how I use that manual scan button. If you have items that are reserved by ID, you can just use that manual staging button. So you do not have to have a barcode scanner. Now, if you do require scan for pickup, that will require a barcode scanner. But as long as you don't have that setting enabled, you can absolutely use staging without the barcodes. Okay. And when will the new release come out? This is from SAIC. So it is already out. So you can reach out to support to get that upgrade scheduled at any time. All right. Are we hiring? That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
We did have a few more questions, AJ. So
Yeah.
one question is, can we turn staging off to make it so we don't see that option?
Yeah, so I'm gonna just reshare my screen to work through a few of these. So staging is going to always be an option. If you don't stage, you can ignore this button, right? And you can just continue to use the same workflow you've been using. However, if you do require scan for pickup, so that would be, this scan for pickup button. This new modal is what that scan for pickup will look like. So the modal will look a little bit different, but the workflow is the same. And the really nice thing with scan for pickup is you'll get super clear feedback on how much of your checkout has been scanned and is ready to go. Great question.
All right. All right, here's another question. It says, will staged resources be uniquely listed from unstaged resources in the contents tab of an allocation? So the same way that returned resources are separated out.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I can actually stage part of this reservation. So let's do that. One sec. It's not gonna like these particular barcodes because they're currently reserved to someone else, but okay, as those items are staged, so right now I've staged half of this and not the other half. So let's just go out. You'll notice that that same icon that was in the staging modal, so it looks like a little push cart that's been packed, it will show up in the contents tab, and then the ones that are unstaged will not have that icon. So great question. And then I see Susan's question, do they have to select a project? Such a great question, Susan. So that project I was selecting is part of an add-on module, so I apologize, I didn't specify that. That's for our green lighting module that allows you to assign patrons to specific projects. So no, if you don't have that module, you don't have to worry about the project. For those that do have green lighting, it just depends on your settings, what you require, if you'll have to select a project. All right.
So it looks like we have one more question in the chat, and it says, because our volume is small, can we either punch in the barcodes or will we be forced to scan? That's a really great question.
Such a great question. Yeah, so if you require scan for pickup, which is an optional setting, you will either need to scan in the item with a barcode scanner, or this little scan icon here will ask WebCheckout will ask to connect to the camera that's on your device. So if you're like using a tablet or a laptop, however, you can also type in the barcode name. So if you require scan for pickup, you have those three options, but it does require at least typing in a barcode. And again, if you don't require that setting, you don't need to worry about it. You can always manually add the items.
All right, these are all really great questions that are coming in, and I think we've answered all of the questions we've received so far in the chat. Any other questions folks are really waiting to ask about this version? Oh, did we just get a new one? All right. Does staging work well with bundles?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you may have remembered me adding that bundle at the beginning. So I can let me go ahead and create a new reservation here just to showcase that. I'll hit continue, and I'm going to add that same bundle that I added in the patron portal. So I'm just going to type in this resource type autocomplete my Sony camera bundle. And I'm going to confirm this reservation. And now I'll show you staging. So, all right, if I stage this reservation, so with bundles, and just for anyone that doesn't have that this module, bundles allow you to bundle together your items that are reserved by resource type. So these are all resource types that are bundled together. And I can scan in some barcodes. So what this is doing is it's assigning barcodes as well as staging these items. So I'll scan them in and then it adds that to that scan results. So in short, yes, it works great with bundles.
All right, and it looks like we did get another question that
Great.
says, do items that were reserved by resource type are these automatically changed to ID when pre-pack?
That's such a great question. So it depends on your settings. So if I go admin checkout center, and I'm going to select this operations tab. For those of you with the RRT module, you have a couple settings that affect how you pre-pack orders with RRT. We have allow RRT pickup and allow RRT auto assign. If you enable allow RRT pickup, what that means is if someone creates a reservation either through the portal or if the operators do it, so they're creating it by resource type or by category, the system will pick out the item for you. The reason you might want to do that is if you have a really heavily allocated items and you just want the system to pick out what's available so you don't have to look at your schedule. However, many people that are using the RRT module, they will not use this setting because that way, if someone reserves through the portal by RRT, your operators can go to your shelf and pick up any item they want. So the short answer is it depends on your settings, what works best for your workflow.
Excellent. And it looks like we have one more question in the chat that's unanswered, and that is if a checkout is late, is there a way to change the end date to extend? That's another one of those it depends question.
Yeah, this is such a great question. So I'm going to click on this checkout just as an example. So this has to do with your renewal policies. So you'll notice on this left-hand pane, there's this renew checkout button. If I click that, I can then extend the length of this checkout. So I can click the pencil icon and I'm just going to extend this out to the 24th, hit submit. Now, I want to make a note, as Brittany mentioned, this does depend. So it depends on if you allow renewals. It depends on your renewal count limit. So how many times you allow renewals. And I want to also note that in our current versions, you can also renew through the patron portal if you allow your patrons to. So it depends again, how long you allow to renew, how many times you allow to renew, and if you allow a patron to renew or just the operator. So all of those settings will affect that, but absolutely, if you allow that, you can extend your checkout.
Yes, and you have to, I would recommend checking that renewal grace period.
Yes, thank you, Brittany.
Renewals cannot occur past that renewal grace period.
Thank you.
All right. I think we are caught up on our questions. We do still have a few minutes left in this session, folks. Are there any other questions, concerns, especially about the new version? I know there's quite a bit of change with the pickup process and patron portal. All right, it looks like we do have one more question that asks if projects are a separate module. So projects come along with the green lighting module, and that is a separate module. Yes. Yeah. All right, any other burning questions?
And I'll also just mention, Greg, too, if you are interested in the green module, please feel free to reach out to us. We can connect you to your client advocate who can get you a quote for that module.
All right. Any questions unanswered? Any other burning questions before we take a quick break before session number 2? All right, well, before we take a quick break, I will let AJ provide you with just a few more announcements before launching a quick poll. So just hold tight, folks.
Yeah, so I just wanted to note before our break, if you would like to schedule that upgrade, we do encourage you to reach out to support@webcheckout.net to get that scheduled. And of course, if you do have time prior to your school year, especially if you want to take advantage of all these new features, I do encourage you to do that. Additionally, to view our release notes, please check out our community site. Our community site, you can also connect with other admins who and maybe ask them about what workflows are working for them. So just like you saw today with Rashawn, you can connect with other admins and see what is and isn't working with their particular workflows. And we will, of course, today talk a little more about that community site. I also want to make a note that you saw that patron portal branding at the beginning of the call. So where my patron portal was teal and orange. Many of you that you have taken advantage of professional services have branded your patron portal or have also gotten training for operators on new features or just general admin training or resource cleanup, just a variety of things. So if you are interested in any of those services, please reach out to sales@webcheckout.net or email us any way you want, and we will get you connected to get you some professional services to support your processes this year. And just to answer Susan in the chat, upgrading does not cost anything. That is covered by your annual maintenance, so you can schedule it at any time. Well, thank you all so much for joining this session, and I will go ahead and pass it back to Brittany.
All right, great job, AJ and Rashawn. You both did such a wonderful job. So to conclude our first session, I will be launching a poll, folks. So look out on your end to receive this. So